Check out today's piece of fan art. It's Leonidas from Fate Grand Order. This is a really cool piece for how it combines bold pen lines with softer pencil shading. The background is really neat, too. It looks like a Studio Trigger explosion. Overall, a very solid work. Thank you so much, this is Ennio. Welcome back to OtakuDaiKun. Dai here. As I'm sure you're abundantly aware, the Nasuverse is complicated. There are lots of terms and buzzwords that make understanding the lore very difficult for newcomers and veterans alike. Without a direct feed to Nasu's own headspace, we're left to interpret his works from the scraps of information he publishes in material books or interviews. Trying to understand his writing is practically a full-time job, and I hope I've done a decent job so far helping people learn about this stuff through my own understanding of it all. In that endeavor, I thought it would be fun to try and streamline and speedrun the lore-explaining process, making things as simple and relatable as I can. I call it a speedrun, but it's not like there's an objective way to measure whether I've explained something to your satisfaction. All I've got is this meme full of Fate buzzwords, and hopefully by the end of my rant, you'll have a basic idea of what each and every one of them is. The goal isn't to regurgitate official definitions, but to use layman's terms, and I anticipate that aspect to be the most fun. While this meme is intentionally disorganized, I'll be presenting the terms in an order I find to be the most efficient. Without further ado, let's begin. The root is the source of all things that exist in the Nasuverse, hence why it's also called the root of all existence. It's a metaphysical place from where all things come and will eventually return. Generally, it looks like a big, deep, dark void. It also has this nifty thing called the Akashic Records. It's a record of history, including not just our own history, but all sorts of other possibilities. Think of it like waking up in the morning and choosing to eat cereal for breakfast. Akasha also keeps track of what history would be like had you chosen to eat an omelet for breakfast instead. Magecraft is the practice of manipulating the physical world using magical energy, or mana, generated by the planet and our own bodies. It lets people do cool shit like conjure fire, mask their presence, or even erect barriers. Not everyone can use Magecraft, however. Mages are born with magic circuits, and they need to carefully ensure their next of kin will inherit those genetics. This may sound semantic, but in the Nasuverse, there's a difference between Magecraft and magic. There are certain things ordinary mages just can't do. Certain things, such as time travel, are considered miracles that are outside of what mages are capable of. By reaching the root, however, a mage can return with true magic. Spells that not only manipulate the world, but transcend its limitations. An example of true magic is Kaleidoscope. When the mage Keisher Zelret Schweinorg reached the root, he came back with the ability to access parallel worlds. Not only could he travel between these worlds at his discretion, he could also channel mana from other worlds to essentially have an infinite supply of energy. Reaching the root is something that many passionate mages strive for, but it's not easy thanks to the counterforce. Planet Earth is alive and has a will of its own. It wants to protect itself and humanity, which means keeping pesky humans away from such overwhelming power. The planet's effort to protect itself and humanity is called the counterforce, and it usually kicks in to stop mages from reaching the root. One way mages found to bypass the counterforce was to conduct a Holy Grail war. It was a ritual designed to gather enough mana for mages to force their way through to the root. Conventionally, the genuine Holy Grail is the goblet that received the blood of Christ. That cup definitely exists somewhere in the world, but when mages talk about the Holy Grail, they're pretty much just using the term Holy Grail as a reference. In Magecraft, the Holy Grail can refer to two separate things. Most often, we're talking about a Lesser Grail, which is just a receptacle for mana storage. By gathering a ton of mana into a Lesser Grail, it can be used to grant wishes. Otherwise, we're referring to the Greater Grail, which is essentially a giant spell that allows for the Holy Grail Wars to function. To this day, no mage has ever succeeded in reaching the root through a Holy Grail War. Rather, the mana stored in the Lesser Grail either gets used or unleashed in response to a mage's wish. While Magecraft is based on pedigree, that doesn't mean mages don't need to learn and train their skills. Since long ago, Mages have established the Mages Association, and their headquarters is a place called the Clock Tower in London. It's like the Hogwarts of the Nasuverse, hiding in plain sight as a university for mages to study. The Mages Association is a large organization that maintains secrecy of their craft. The general populace and world governments may not be aware of its existence, but the Holy Church is a group that both knows about and interacts with mages. For instance, even if the Holy Grail War doesn't use the actual Holy Grail, members of the Church still insist on supervising the wars just in case. They devote themselves to God, but a lot of what the Church does is hunting heretics and demonic creatures. Mostly, the Church specializes in hunting vampires, and it can be quite morbid despite their faith. I already mentioned that the planet is alive and tries to protect itself and humanity. Sure, this includes stopping humans from reaching the root, but that's far from the only threat the counterforce has to worry about. Some of the greatest threats to humanity are the beasts of humanity, beings that emerge and oppose humans through their very nature. They're the darkness of mankind given form, essentially. As such, you can't really have humans without risking the formation of beasts. Regardless, the counterforce still aims to slay these beasts of humanity, and implements a system called the Throne of Heroes to do so. Throughout history, famous humans who go down in legend as heroes or villains are recorded by the planet so that they can be summoned to protect it. These heroic spirits are summoned by the planet as counter-guardians, agents of the counterforce who fight to ensure humanity's survival. Among the heroic spirits are the Grand Servants, humanity's greatest heroes recruited specifically to fight the beasts. Generally, whenever a beast manifests, the counterforce will send out a Grand Servant to match. Heroic spirits are strange beings that consist of mana. They are a combination of a fallen hero's soul and the materialization of their legends. They manifest in containers called Saintcrafts, or Saint Origins, which define their strength and abilities. These containers require mana for a servant to remain summoned. A Saintcraft is essentially a servant's body, and deeper in is a spiritual core that, if damaged, causes the servant to disappear. Just think of it as the body and heart of a servant, respectively. A servant Saintcraft defines various aspects about them, including what class they are. We've got lots of different classes, including sabers, archers, lancers, casters, riders, assassins, and berserkers. Beyond that are what we call extra classes, and one of those is the alter ego. Heroes are multifaceted, with different sides of their personality. In a binary sense, many servants have both a good and evil side to themselves. Sometimes these different aspects wind up splitting off and becoming separate beings entirely. Alter egos emerge when part of a servant separates from its host and develops its own identity. Recall when I mentioned the Akashic Records, and how they keep record of various histories. Well, this is because the Nasuverse is a multiverse. It consists of multiple timelines running parallel to one another. If you've seen Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse or No Way Home, I'm sure you're familiar with this idea. Which Spider-Man is real, Tobey Maguire or Tom Holland? What about all the different comic book versions of Spider-Man? Well, they're all real, relative to their own timelines. In Fate, we've got worlds where King Arthur is a man, and others where she's a woman. Fate Stay Night and its different routes are all different timelines from Fate Apocrypha or Grand Order. They all exist independently from each other. What makes the Nasuverse unique, however, is that the universe at large, while it accommodates hundreds and thousands of alternate timelines, is unable to maintain an infinite number of them. It's as if the universe has a limited bandwidth or hard drive space. As such, it needs to prioritize some worlds over others, and the way it does so is by trying to preserve what is called pan-human history, or proper human history. The universe picks one future for humanity as a baseline, and then deletes or gets rid of all other worlds that differ too greatly from it. Gods play an important role in fate. Most of the time, gods are just beings born from human worship. They exist because we believe in them, Santa style, so when we stop believing in them, they can no longer stick around. We distinguish between the Age of Gods and the Age of Man, or the Modern Era, for this very reason. As mages began to rely on science and technology more than faith, the gods could no longer reside with humanity. Thus, the gods migrated to a separate plane of existence on Earth known as the reverse side of the world. In any given timeline, you can think of reality as a sandwich of sorts, with different layers stacked atop each other. Humans exist in the outer layer of reality, whereas the gods ventured deeper to a separate layer where they could remain after humans abandoned them. In addition to traditional gods, the Nasuverse acknowledges many other godly beings as well. There are the Lovecraftian outer gods that exist outside the realm of human comprehension. There are the Greek gods, which were actually machines from another universe that traveled to Earth while looking for a sustainable planet. There are other alien-esque creatures we know little about, such as the Umbral Star, or whichever race built the moon cell. To complicate things further, we also have a being called the Alien God, sometimes localized as the Foreign God. Turns out, this alien god isn't really a god at all, but rather some extremely powerful alien creature that came to Earth after scientists dissected its relative. The alien god wants to conquer Earth, but first needs an earthly body to inhabit. Recall how I said the universe trims all parallel worlds that deviate too far from proper human history? Well, the alien god decides to weaponize these abandoned worlds by preventing their removal. Lost Belts, then, are the select few timelines that the alien god has chosen to preserve. They would have otherwise been pruned for being too different from what the universe considers normal, but the alien god is keeping them alive through mysterious artifacts called fantasy trees, or trees of emptiness. If you chop down one of these trees, the world it's protecting will disappear as though it never existed in the first place. Since the alien god doesn't have a body at first, it recruits both humans and servants to help with this process. The Crypters are a group of mages from Chaldea that were supposed to go on to save the world from incineration, but instead died in an explosion. In order for a second chance at life, these mages agreed to serve the alien god and protect the fantasy trees of various Lost Belts. In FGO, your goal is to destroy these trees, making the Crypters your enemies, which sucks because they used to be your allies. Recall how I said the Earth was alive. It has a will to protect itself and the humans on it. Turns out, plenty of other celestial bodies, such as moons and planets, are also alive. Many of them develop what is called an Ultimate One, or a type, a being that is essentially a planet's living avatar. There are various beings like Type Mercury and Type Venus that, in some Nasuverse stories, actually threaten or interact with humanity. Until recently, these Ultimate Ones haven't played a very major role in Fate's story. The one that's had the most impact, however, is Brunstud of the Crimson Moon, otherwise known as Type Moon. At one point, the Earth was struggling to put humanity in its place. It's a complicated relationship. Humans are a part of the planet, and yet they are often one of the planet's greatest threats. Thus, the planet's will decided to partner up with Type Moon in an attempt to effectively police humanity. Captain Planet! Our buddy Zelrech, the mage who reached the root and got his hands on Kaleidoscope, well, he defeated Type Moon in battle. What the Earth was left with after that fight were nature spirits called True Ancestors. Their job was to keep humanity in check, to prevent them from destroying nature, but they had a fatal flaw. True Ancestors began to develop a thirst for blood, and soon they succumbed to that bloodlust by attacking humans, turning them into vampires called Dead Apostles. Ever since, both the True Ancestors and Dead Apostles have been branded as vampiric monsters by the Holy Church, and the three groups continue to fight to this day. The last term is, of course, Lost Pants, which I can only imagine is a joke that many characters in Fate seem to be pantless. Folks such as Europa and Jack the Ripper, for instance, appear to be wearing lingerie bottoms and nothing else to cover their legs. Joke about it all you want, but let's face it, you know you want it. So, what do you guys think of my explanation? Was it too long or too short? Are you still confused? Personally, I feel like the confusion comes from Fate being so big. It's not that any one concept is too difficult, but rather the amalgamation of all these concepts becomes overwhelming. Take it one step at a time, and you should do just fine. Before I go ahead and roll the credits, I want to give a special shout out to all my $10 and up supporters. Video Gamer 75, Stephen Elak, Samuel Gersten, Otaku Mom, Jens Bauman, Mystic Samurai 1983, Free Brick, RNG or Shuffles 1498, Alexis Yukio Gomez Yamato, Johnny Tsunami, Link Pendrago, Caitlin P, Vladimir Ovna, Succubus Sakura, and SF Giants fan Mike. Thank you all so much. Thanks for watching.
If you enjoy this channel, help us grow by liking, commenting, sharing the video, subscribing to OtakuDaiKun, and
most of all, smashing that notification bell so you don't miss out on all of our anime discussion, lore, or Let's Play content.
you can support us directly through Patreon, Subscribestar, or our YouTube membership, all of which come with benefits like exclusive vids and early access.
As always,
Celebrate your fandom!